Okay, thanks for joining us today. We're going to cover a little bit of information about some of the many sanders that Festool has on their lineup. We use most of them in our workshop and also sell them in our store, so we've got a lot of practical experience with them. We talk with a lot of people that use them in various applications and specialties. And so one thing I like about the FESTOOL Sanders as a whole is just the variety in options you have. And so we're going to go over, just briefly touch on some of the high points of some of these sanders and hopefully answer some questions if you've been looking at one or just been curious as far as what makes them different. Starting off, we're going to talk about the Rotec Sanders and this little guy, which is the 3.5 inch RO90. The numbers at the end basically designate the size of the pad in millimeters. So this is going to be 90 millimeters, which translates to about 3.5 inches or so. This is a great sander for using on smaller projects, face frames especially, cabinet guys like it. It's got a dual mode, so it's rotary, which is direct drive, which basically spins the head in much like an angle grinder does, but it still has a little bit of an offset to it as well. You just flip the switch and you can go to a straight random orbit, which is used for more fine sanding or finish sanding. Think of it more like a coarse finish sander in that mode. This one also has the option to put a small delta head on the front that just gets into tight spaces and corners. It doesn't spin in a circle. You'll have to turn it to the delta head mode for that, and it basically turns into a random orbit sander. So that option is great, especially for cabinets or doors, things that have smaller surface areas. Flooring guys also like this one because they can get up right into corners real tight, whereas a big 6-inch sander would leave a big gap that was unsanded. Balance-wise, it's fairly light. It doesn't really stand up on its own just because of the weight here, but it's balanced pretty well. Next, we're going to talk about the RO125. This is a 5-inch sanding head, so a lot like the size that most traditional sanders are. The 5-inch head is pretty commonly available. Again, it's a dual mode, so you can switch it back from coarse mode. When it's in coarse mode, you can kind of hear the motor winding, and it's real hard to turn the head. That means it's in direct drive. When you flip the switch to sanding mode or finish sand mode, this head will spin independently. So that's kind of how you know the difference there. One thing you can do with the heads on all these sanders is remove them very easily. There's usually a little switch. Anything green does something, so you want to find something that's green and then just turn the head. You can swap out your heads for different density pads. If you wear this one out, you can put a new one on. And there we go, we put it back on, we're ready to get to work. This one is a popular sander just because of its size. It's great for sanding smaller projects, even tabletops and bigger projects as well. The next biggest sander is going to be the 6-inch or the RO150, so 150 millimeters. The main difference in pad size is really the difference between these two sanders. This has probably about 33% more or 35 or somewhere around there percent more surface area than the 5-inch sander does. So if I'm sanding on the same workpiece, I'm going to get done a lot sooner with this sander than I will with that one. So in my application, doing a lot of larger slabs and tabletops, this is my go-to because I want to get done as quick as possible. I don't want to spend the time it would take to sand the same amount with a smaller sander. All three of these sanders are called multi-mode sanders or dual mode. Sometimes there's a misconception that you can get one of these sanders and not have to get a belt sander, and you don't have to get a finish sander because this basically would take the place of a belt sander and a finish sander. I kind of disagree because this does great with anything that you would have normally used a belt sander for. It also does great finish sanding. The main drawback that I found is I don't want to finish sand with a 3 or 4 pound machine because I'm going to get tired real quick. I can still finish sand with it just fine. Fatigue is going to kind of get you on that one. But in a pinch, I can finish sand with it just fine. I've done projects up to 1,000 grit with the RO150 in rotary mode, never put it to the random orbit mode, and I couldn't tell the difference. So a lot of that's your technique. It may not work that easy for you, but for me, I find that they're very versatile. Rotary mode is going to be more of what you would expect to see out of a belt sander as far as your material removal rates. It'll remove a lot of material very quickly, but also leave a very smooth surface. If you've ever used a belt sander, you know it's extremely hard to control and keep gouge marks from happening. And you usually have to go back with a finish sander and clean up the mess that you made with the belt sander. That is not the case with any of these RO sanders. It will leave a finish that is very smooth and really surprising to most people as far as how smooth it gets with the rate that it takes material off. Next, we're going to go over here to their Ets Sanders. These are some of the older sanders that Festool's made for years. They're tried and proven. Also still some of the most popular sanders, mainly because of the price. They are more affordable, but the main difference in these sanders is going to be the motor that's in them. These have a brushed motor, so it's quite a large, heavy motor that's in here, going to be built a lot like your traditional, cheaper versions of sanders. It's built on a very solid chassis, very smooth running, but the main drawback to these that I see is more of the weight. Festool makes the Ets sanders in a 5-inch or 125 millimeter pad, and then a 6-inch or 150 millimeter pad as well. I wouldn't at all say that they are cheaper built, but they are cheaper as far as money goes in the cost. They are the cheapest sanders that Festool makes if you're looking at just the straight dollar. Comparing these sanders to the EC series is really kind of a night and day comparison. As far as ergonomics go, this sander is very lightweight, and this one is noticeably heavier. These two sanders are the Ets EC series. This is the 125, and this is the 150. These are very lightweight. The motor in these guys is very small. They fit it just in this little kind of housing here, whereas it takes up this much space to fit the same or comparable size motor in this sander. If you were to do a blind test and sand with both of them and you didn't know what sander you're using, really, from my experience, the sand quality and the rate of sanding and all of those factors are really going to be identical. I think the biggest factor in deciding one is going to be the price and then ergonomics. If you're sanding a lot of contours and edges, this sander is definitely the sander to go with because it's balanced a little better and a little more lightweight. Whereas this one, you can see has a little more torque. So if I'm doing more than just flat sanding, edges, roundovers, it's going to create a little more wrist fatigue. Going back to the EC series sanders, the 6-inch is my preference for doing finish sanding. Again, because I'm doing larger tops like tables and things like that. Although I think the 5-inch or the 125 is probably the most popular version just because it's a little smaller and lighter weight. So again, the main differences are brushless motor, standard brushed motor, which is a little heavier. Other than that, those are the main differences that I see. All the sanders, whether it's the EC, the ETS, or the RO sanders, have dust ports that are compatible with all the Festool dust extractor hoses. And then your quick connect for your electrical connection goes right in here, just a quarter turn. I've never had any problems with it. Seems to work great. And then if you lose a power cord or one breaks or you forget one, you can rob one from one of your other tools. Lastly, you probably noticed there's this little guy sitting here, and this is a hybrid sander. So it's a battery powered version of this sander here, except it has a brushless motor on it. So very lightweight. Good sander if you're going to be doing quick touch-up jobs, portable jobs, just want to grab a sander quick, sand for a few minutes. I haven't done an actual timeline as far as how long the battery will last, but it's lasted way longer than I would have expected from my previous use of other sanders that were battery powered and maybe not so great. The battery pack's real small and lightweight, just clicks into the back. The sander comes with a little dust bag, which is great. You can also take that off, and then it's got your standard port to hook up, just like your other sanders do, to your dust extractor hose. One thing you might notice about this sander is the edge guard that I have on it. These sanders here come with edge guards, and these basically clip on and keep you from bumping in a corner and catching or gouging out your sander. They are easily removed, but somewhat specific to the sander that you purchase. Another thing that's nice with all the sanders is they've got adjustable speed controls. So that's the speed control for this one. Here we can really throttle it down, or we can go full tilt. So that really helps if you want to sand very lightly, or a sander, say like the Rotec is a little too aggressive for what you want, then just throttle it down a little bit and you'll be good to go. The two main sanders that I use on a daily basis in my workshop are going to be the RO 150 and the ETS EC 150. Again, that's because I'm doing a lot larger surface areas, and so time is basically something that I want to recoup as much of as I can. And so using a bigger sander saves time for me and helps me get more done. You'll notice too that they also have a little bit better stance because there's a little bit wider surface area. Sometimes it's 5 inches, just a little tippy. Honestly, I don't think that because a sander tips over is well balanced means it's good or bad. It just means that it's going to sand a little smoother because it's going to glide over imperfections and high and low spots in the wood. But really, at the end of the day, all these sanders are great. And before we close, I'll show you a little thing about this battery-powered sander, which is pretty impressive. So I used to think that battery-powered things were meant for kids' toys and not for tools I was using in the workshop. But this sander really changed it all for me. I don't use it in the workshop a lot, but just as a testament to how precision and smooth running this sander is. One thing I do a lot in the store when I'm demoing tools for customers is I'll let them use them and kind of put their hands on them. And one thing I like to do with this sander is turn it on and just let go. I'm just going to guess that most sanders that people have used would have probably skidded off the work surface as soon as I let go of the sander. Now this table is not quite level, so it's going to drift around a little bit, probably to the lowest point. But honestly, how many sanders have you ever seen that you could just let go and would sit there and spin and not go scooting off the table? So this one runs really smooth. This is 120 grit sandpaper. I've actually got this same reaction from the sander on pretty much all kinds of grit on all different surfaces. But it's very smooth, pleasure to use, and like you just saw there, it's built real well and very well balanced. So thank you for watching today. We hope we've answered some of your questions. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and take care till next time.